For that, you could see right now, maybe some of you knowing this tool already. It's Mentimeter. You go with your mobile phone on Menti.com and put in a number, or just use the QR code in order to onboard to our tool. So with this tool, I'm gonna have some polls because I would love to know where you're all standing, more or less. So do some measurements with you. Use it as my presentation tool, but also as a feedback tool. So this is the place where you're gonna be able to post your questions in between, or also for the Q&A session afterwards. So let me see how many people onboarded. So I would love you to give me all your hearts in order to see how many people are already there. So share love with the group. So my title today is Culture is Read Only, and the subtitle is And It's Strategy for Breakfast. I don't know if you all are joining today because you're maybe resonating with the title, that you see that there's some hurdles you're facing, even though we mean really all the best intentions are there, but somehow things are not really the way we think they should be. So I got so far 13, 14 people joining this. So it's not mandatory, but it's cool really to establish something like a we feeling, which I really like. I see somebody was already posting a question. No, like the culture is only is not a trademark. No, I think this is you can look in literature. You can stumble upon this several times. Already happened. I don't have now in top of my mind books I can recommend you on this, but I was stumbling upon this and going to my personal journey to understand why is like that. And hopefully today I will discover with you and create understanding of why maybe this is the case. So just 15 people are joining of the 25. If you're all okay with moving on, just give me a thumbs up after you spread so much love, and let me just check the other question. Okay. It's not Peter Drucker. He might also be part of today's topic. So, okay, 18 people. So all thumbs up. So I'm gonna just continue. Great, thank you very much. 20 people are on the Menti. Awesome. So I would love to know first where you are coming from. So where are you actually involved? In what kind of organization predominantly while working? Are you coming from the corporate sector? Are you part of a startup? Regardless if you're a founding one or a coaching one or developing in one, I just would love to know where we spread. So you see corporate environment is dominant right now, followed by SME, small and medium enterprises. I'm still curious where this all other is going from. And I guess at least one person I know here in this room who is from the government. Great. So, and what is your role in your environment you currently joined, the organization you're part of, or maybe working for? Somebody is here on a C level. So somehow I haven't been covering all the job titles CC people or in others. And quite a lot of you are coaches, so for me it's really an honor to have this kind of audience, because usually most of the time I'm working and talking to agile newbies who would love to explore the agile ways of working and mindset and so on. And sometimes with IT development teams, but very often even non-IT teams. So it's really for me quite an interesting challenge to have so many pros in between. So looking forward to get into conversation with you. So I would love to know in a few words from you, what does culture mean to you? Mm-hmm. Behavior, norms, mindset, food. I see operating system, just maybe linked to a mindset. The operating system, I think it's also meant from what perspectives we are processing our environment, isn't it? What is our mindset? Values, mindset, organization, behaviors, habits. So it's something like a collective behavior, the way we organize, the values we comply to. Look what a beautiful picture emerged now in our group. This is a point in time where I sometimes invite a group for would they see and observe or whatever emerged from the group. If you like, you can leave some comments in the chat right now. Okay, let me go to the next slide. So I see generally you see all in the group. It is all about mindset, and the culture is the way we're organizing ourselves, or the organizational culture, and somehow belonging and church is somehow related to it. I think we can maybe bring those words you posted there somehow into relation to each other. I would love to know still where you're standing in a group. It will influence maybe where I put more focus on what I'm going to talk today about. Where is your organization standing? What of those claims here are resonating with you? What do you strongly agree? I strongly disagree. Thank you, Piotr, for helping with the Menti code. So we can see that not so many of you here in this room right now believe that you're in a agile environment, but you can see that maybe your organization is sometimes overestimating themselves. I have this in my work also very often, that people are coming to agile kickoffs and say, yeah, we're all doing it, we are scrumming and we know all. And I'm confronting them people just with simple questions about basic, framework questions about Scrum and other questions, and then I can. It's a really interesting way to see if the people are really exposed to where they're currently standing versus where you thought were standing. This can be pretty powerful. It can be pretty powerful. But I see some people are. Most of you are in a good atmosphere, which is good. And we have a very distributed picture of how the leaders are contributing the positive culture. Okay, so if you look in your environment, what you see is like, what is the biggest problems, or what problems do you see in your current environment? Portfolio work in progress. Oh, no, no, not work in progress. Whip limit. Too many things at once. Got it. Overachievers. Fearful overachievers. Mindset. This is an interesting claim. Hard to pin down what culture leadership wants. Legacy portfolio. I guess it means that we want to do new stuff, but we still have a bound to old approaches and old plans. Leadership problems. Lack of clarity. No safe to fail place. So no psychological safety. Leaders don't promote. No trust, no politics. Not enough time to dedicate in improving the culture. So it's like running on the on the highway with a car 180 kilometers per hour and not having time for finding the gasoline station, isn't it? Running. Temptation. Mm-hmm. Mix of established attitudes. Bureaucracy. No real direction. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, sticking to the old way. And why changing? There's like one story which just comes immediately to my mind. It was like a German software company, started in the 60s or 70s. So they had like still a core system where they did do the, the cards you put in and make holes into it, Lochkarten system, and then you just program it like this way. So, and they work closely with the governments, and they've been so much sticking to the old established ways of doing things that they have the problem right now that the core programmers literally dying out. And one of the core programmers, he is just all the time on cruise ship. Now in this time maybe is not. And coming back whenever something in the government is changing, coming back, put some holes into this card and puts it back ridiculously. So there was some interesting things in my career, but this was really the most ridiculous things to do. And it was really not easy to cope with this kind of basic culture. Okay, let's move on. So this picture I'm showing you now, I did it inspired by Noah Harari, who was drawing a nice picture about us as humanity and making the difference. I think it was in Homo Deus or Sapiens. I don't remember which of his books, but he was saying, aren't we smart little monkeys? Aren't we really cool by having all this technology and this traversing of knowledge and experience, and found a way how to overcome DNA informational transformation by having awesome technologies like book print and the most significant difference which sticks to my mind from his book was why we are so special compared to other monkeys is because we are developing culture and we are able to reinvent our culture and we're transforming our culture. We have culture in the first place. And somehow, whatever we do, it is emerging in a collective behavior. It is influenced by technology, but it's also influencing technology. So technology, environment putting us in, the practices we do, the way we communicate, all together somehow is interconnected and feels very complex to grasp a view on it or to guess how this is all interconnected. And today I would love to introduce you maybe a way of looking at things which will maybe help you to dealing with your clients, being more patient with your environment you are currently in, and helping you maybe make the right decision of what impulses to set, what setups to establish, and what focus to put in a given time, moment in time. We're in a really interesting point in time in human culture because our culture and cultures, I don't want to be very, let's say, stick to one certain kind of culture in, let's say, local culture, you know, and we have even inside of one country different cultures, but a predominant approach and way of thinking and believing, processing reality is, and which is changing, is that we are influenced just the last 100 years by basically one forethinker, Mr. Frederick Taylor, who was shaping the way we created our societies, who was just by establishing a scientific approach of managing projects, people, companies, forming a whole, like was enabling us to form a whole societies, the whole Western capitalistic way of approaching. You can, let's say, the way we work together is brought down to this very simple approach of one is thinking, the other is executing. One is creating the idea, the other is delivering the idea, but we need to establish roles to control the delivery. It was really, really helpful in the past and was influencing our whole working culture. And this, I have always in mind when I come into companies, that this is the way the people got taught by the school system, by their mothers, by wherever they've been experiencing reality. This is the only way to go. But you know, and most of you maybe here in this call know that we have different thought schools where we went away from everything is the machine, like, you know, Taylorism, or let's say the steam machine thinking. We have a steam machine, puts pressure on a closed room, like puts pressure on an organization, on a team, and then directed pressure escape leads to move to work. And this kind of approach was working pretty fine, right, in complicated environments. But all those software dudes, all those new economy dudes, and the things which are really customer-centric developed in the last 20 years showed us that we can organize ourselves differently, that other company cultures emerge, where we don't have to wait until a boss is just nodding yes or not. I was seeing somebody was saying what leadership culture wants is interesting. Like what is prescribed, you know, Tayloristic approach. We have a smart elite deciding for the others, towards a, like, forced by the soft environment that we have to self-organize because the world is just too complex. Thank you for all the hearts. I'm coming to the point where I wanted to tell you today. You know, there was one belief, there's one best way, and let's optimize this way. I was taking the German word in the top because I love this. I love the German language. They conquered nouns in a nice way. Wissenschaftliche Betriebsführung, you know, like this approach of, and Germans are very good in that. So I'm like, honestly, when I was all around Europe, like the most difficult environments, to be honest, have been like, say, don't kill me, guys, but Germany, really, because the Germans are really much in love in the post-war success of executing terrorism, very structured, yes. And there is just this on German way to do stuff, right? And then suddenly all those Californian hippies came around, and they just showed that there another culture is possible. Let's figure out together, right? Let's co-create. And this is influencing the whole world. And the success of this kind of thinking school is gaining more and more dominance. Now, I would love to know from all of you, do you recognize this picture? And is this picture telling you something? Please take out your Menti. You remember Menti code was 385941, or the QR code if you have it closed. And please vote if you recognize this picture. I'm going to reveal the picture soon, and let's see. I'm also really excited because actually the plan is to deep dive on this topic. So this is a prerequisite for today's session. So 12 people voted. Let's see the tendency. Okay. So for the ones who are here in this call, thank you for staying with us when we look this video again. And for the rest, I would love to share with you. So this video gonna show you is explaining a book which is called Reinventing Organizations, written by Laloux. And this was really a big impulse for my life, and bringing also connected to this book and whatever also going to share you more. Like, this book was really influencing the way of my research and exploring some thought leaders, which then revealed to me, and I discovered then and suddenly, oh, so many of my coaching friends already knowing it, and why I'm so late. But anyhow, I would love now, that's why also share with you this video, and then expand the knowledge of this video towards the model I would love to bring today in this webinar. So my first time I'm using this webinar jam, but I think I'm gonna make it. So get ready, and let's see you again in more or less than 9 minutes.
In a fascinating book called Reinventing Organizations, author Frédéric Laloux recounts the evolving history of how people have worked together in large organizations and how new perspectives or paradigms have emerged over the centuries that unlocked new levels of prosperity as they became the predominant approach. In this video, we'll take a look at these paradigms, then examine how they can inform our thinking about adopting agile or lean approaches. Each new paradigm is described by its own color, has some unique characteristics, and some breakthrough ideas. And we'll look at some examples of organizations operating under each paradigm today. We will start with the oldest paradigm, described by the color red. The guiding metaphor for red is that of the wolf pack. Red emerged as people organized.
Oh, sorry. Now I see it's playing now. I'm sorry.
In a fascinating book called Reinventing Organizations, author Frédéric Laloux recounts the evolving history of how people have worked together in large organizations and how new perspectives or paradigms have emerged over the centuries that unlocked new levels of prosperity as they became the predominant approach. In this video, we'll take a look at these paradigms, then examine how they can inform our thinking about adopting agile or lean approaches. Each new paradigm is described by its own color, has some unique characteristics, and some breakthrough ideas. And we'll look at some examples of organizations operating under each paradigm today. We will start with the oldest paradigm, described by the color red. The guiding metaphor for red is that of the wolf pack. Red emerged as people organized into tribes and was the predominant paradigm for centuries. The defining characteristics of red include a powerful leader who inspires fear in the group's enemies and compliance within the group. Red is most useful in situations of chaos, where the powerful leader may be the only thing guaranteeing the survival of the group. The breakthrough ideas of red are command authority, where a leader can set a direction and people will follow, allowing them to work towards a common goal, and division of labor, where people can specialize in a specific type of work that benefits the overall group. Examples of organizations functioning under the red paradigm today include the mafia, street gangs, and tribal militias. Red organizations are limited by the short-term perspective required to survive chaos. The next level, amber, evolved when the instability of fear-based power structures could not accomplish longer-term success. The guiding metaphor for amber organizations is that of an army. Amber emerged as hierarchical patterns like those invented by the Roman military under Julius Caesar and those used by the Catholic Church, enabled focusing on long-term goals which are only possible under stable leadership, being based on status, not physical prowess. The primary characteristic of Amber organizations is their strict hierarchical structure, leading to stability and exerting strong control over the lower levels in the hierarchy. The breakthrough ideas in an Amber organization are taking a long-term perspective, instituting strong processes, and creating formal roles for various levels within the hierarchy. Examples of current organizations that have an Amber perspective are most public schools in the United States, most governments, and traditional churches. Amber organizations begin to hit their limits when conditions change that require new approaches. The next level, Orange, evolved when entrenched Amber organizations were unable to adapt to changing conditions. The guiding metaphor for Orange is that of a machine. Orange emerged in the Age of Reason, along with the American and French revolutions, where individual meritocracy meant that the best ideas had a chance of competing regardless of an individual's status. The primary characteristics of Orange organizations include competition within the organization and with other organizations, a focus on financial profit and growth, and a switch to objectives-based management, where leaders set the strategy and lower levels within the hierarchy are given some freedom in how to carry out the strategy. The breakthrough ideas in an Orange organization are innovation, accountability for reaching the objectives laid out by management, and meritocracy, where individuals can rise within the organization based on their skill, intelligence, and creativity. Orange is the predominant perspective in the world today, and nearly all large corporations function from an Orange perspective, as well as many public universities. Orange begins to hit its limits when people feel that the profit motive is not fulfilling enough, often becoming disengaged with the organization's view of them as cogs in a machine. A 2013 Gallup poll showed that only 30% of U.S. workers were engaged at work, a strong signal of the limits of an Orange perspective. The next level, Green, has emerged as people have sought more meaning in their work. The guiding metaphor for Green is that of the family. The primary characteristics of Green organizations are a focus on delighting customers, making decisions based on a set of shared values, and high engagement from everyone in the organization. The breakthrough ideas are balancing the needs of all stakeholders, including customers, employees, partners, and shareholders for publicly held companies, a focus on culture over strategy, and true empowerment of members in the organization regardless of their hierarchical level. Examples of organizations that have a green perspective are Southwest Airlines and Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. The Agile and Lean movements also emerge from companies with this perspective. Green begins to hit its limits when consensus building results in overly slow decision-making, and the hierarchical structures still existent in Green begin to conflict with people's desires to have greater autonomy. The next level, Teal, is emerging as organizations have discovered how to work effectively without hierarchical structures. The guiding metaphor for Teal is that of a living system. The primary characteristics of a Teal organization are what are known as anti-fragile organizational structures, either flat or based on interlocking circles of evolving roles, aligning around an evolutionary purpose, some shared goal of making the world a better place, and by distributing decision-making authority to all members of the organization using something called the advice process, where any colleague can make any decision in the organization so long as they have sought the advice of anyone that decision might impact. This differs from consensus in that not all advice must be heeded, just considered. The breakthrough ideas in Teal are wholeness, where people can bring their whole selves to work, their spiritual side, their intellectual side, and their creative side, and feel safe that they will not be judged for being themselves. Self-management is another breakthrough idea. In most Teal organizations, there are no managers. And an evolutionary purpose, meaning that the purpose is not owned by any one person, but evolves as new people join the organization and as the organization learns more about how it can make the biggest difference in the world. Examples of Teal organizations include Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, Morningstar, a tomato processing plant responsible for 40% of the tomato products in the United States, and Bertsorg, a 7,000-person home care nursing organization. Agile and Lean are firmly rooted in green, and most of the struggles we see with adoption are in organizations whose leadership have a dominant orange perspective. To someone with an orange perspective, Agile and Lean are seen as simply process improvements to increase productivity, efficiency, or profits. But without adopting the cultural perspectives of green, only those practices that align with orange are adopted, and they are overlaid against orange approaches like top-down management, or valuing profit against any other outcome. Agile thrives in organizations with a predominantly green perspective, and Agile practices become almost overkill in a teal organization, which have evolved their own practices that include Agile values, but where many Agile practices are no longer required, for example, a single product owner. If you are currently part of an orange organization and are looking for ways to make it work better, search out others with a green perspective, especially those in leadership positions, and work with them to help drive the cultural change required to make Agile work as it was designed. Laloux's research indicates that only the top leader in an organization can successfully transform it vertically, for example, from orange to green. However, horizontal transformation is possible, for example, working within the boundaries of orange to make it a more vibrant place of innovation and objectives-based management, instead of a stressful, lifeless place of micromanagement. One important concept is that one color is not necessarily better than any other. There are valuable ideas in every perspective. There is data that shows that the newer perspectives are better able to deal effectively with increasing levels of complexity and interconnectedness. But that does not mean that every situation requires this, or that only green and teal organizations can be successful. Success is defined differently from each perspective. Also, the newer perspectives include the older ones, like a Russian nesting doll, so someone with a teal perspective can and should continue to use orange or amber ideas when they might best meet the needs of the organization. I hope this overview was helpful, and that it gave you some insight into the culture of your organization. Viewing Agile and Lean within this broader cultural context can help us make sense of why some organizations might struggle to fully adopt them, and give us some ideas of how to focus on culture as a key element in any change.
Okay. Sorry for having this trouble starting the video. I hope it was still without big troubles for you. Well, let's go back to sharing application window. This one. So, I don't know how many times I've been watching this video and also reading the corresponding book to it, and I see that, that whenever I was progressing in my life, it always changed a little bit perspective. So it was really good to revisit this. But it was a really, really impactful tool to work with other Agile coaches, build up community of practice, of interests, of Agile people, and all the organizations I've been going to, and it really helped us to start to identify and shorten communications by having those colors in our minds. I know some of you, because I see the comments from you, some of you know where this is all based upon. The thought leader here, basically the main influencer, is Ken Wilber, and he was creating some models of reality, which he claims are really the fundamental models in his view. And I think all models are generally wrong, but some are more useful than others. So looking at culture and looking and dividing it by colors like this, you can or you can also use spiral dynamics for color orientation, but it's all related to each other. It's pretty nice to good to look at culture and identify. And I think like most of you gonna be anyway somehow in the orange perspective. Very often people just make jokes and say, no, we are red, yeah, because depending where you are in the organization, especially the higher you get with the hierarchy, the redder it becomes in some circumstances. Depends on the company. I don't know where you're standing, but I've been not always in super nice environments from my perspective culturally, but I also saw some environments which are really, really good. So my personal there is value in each one of the perspective, but when I say good, I say more greener, more upper, and or sometimes very healthy orange organizations. Let us sink in, because I'm going to expand this whole model a little bit more, because it talks about culture. But since I'm saying that culture is read-only, it's a big claim, a bold claim, yeah. Because we can do some, let's say, so impulses on culture, but there's a broader view on this all of interconnectedness of systems. You can see my screen. Yes, you can see it. So let's imagine the whole cultural model just described can be seen in a different model, and where we extend this kind of view on other perspectives. What I mean by that? This is the so-called integral model. Now I try to the Agile model I try to map with you on integral agile perspective. Or let's just start, and I'm gonna explore with you. So imagine we have 4 quadrants, and one quadrant is the I quadrant, which is basically the beliefs and the mindset. So it's the way, the thing which is going, the operation system, what somebody was saying to you, the inner game. Then we have the it quadrant. It's basically the expression of whatever place in the I quadrant. Those are the practices we do, the behaviors we're exposing. And we have the its quadrant. It's all in the external. It's the, let's say, simplified structures and the governments. So everything we put our individuals in what structures, what governmental structure, what governmental establishment we're putting in it. And then we have the 4th quadrant, where we can put this model in, the integral agile, the model from Laloux, the culture model. It's the we quadrant. In very simplified, it's the culture. So this model I'm showing you on the cross is the integral agile framework, or can be seen as this, and mapped to the model of Frederic Laloux. It works like that. So imagine we have the red perspective in the lower left quadrant. In the mindset of the leader is the wolf, you remember? It's a very strong, top-down, super authoritarian person, just rules with brutality and obedience. Then we go more up. If we have the amber perspective, is the general, right? who believes in the status and also believes in obedience. So you remember the Russian nesting doll, somehow it's included in some kind of portion, the other belief system, but believes in long-term planning and structures and so on. Then we have this orange mindset. I call those people, if I'm really a little bit mad, I call them fearful overachievers, or top-down world. All those people who are really believing and that the world is totally a machine and is controllable, and they believe in this in a career ladder to climb up. And the more higher we go, the more the people going from the egocentric way of looking and operating with the reality towards a more ecocentric, which is more here in this space. And here, very on the top, is the we, the world as living organism way of processing reality. Actually, right now, I would love to show you how this Agile transformation framework looks like. I've been happy to meet Lisa Atkins, and she was then recommending me Michael to make a course with him, and there was learning this integral Agile framework, and was really giving me a different kind of model of look at and environments. And this is basically it. Where we talk about the upper quadrant is all the internal game. The practices and behaviors is on the upper right quadrant. Organizational architecture is the way we structure and govern ourselves, right? So in a postmodern, metamodern is more about self-organization. Here, metamodern about purpose and different kind of decision making and so on, where we just seek advice, not waiting like in the orange, the modern way of where we asking just our superiors for approval to do stuff. So we govern ourselves as organization differently. And on the cultural way, on the last quadrant, it's also expressed. Then you can see the link to the framework of looking at reality from Laloux's perspective. I would love to go a little bit, repeat some stuff, because my intent is today that it sticks a little bit to you, and then we're gonna go a little bit into a small, let's say, feedback round of. I would love to check if you're, let's say, if it sticks a little bit into your mind. So again, the I is all the members' perceptions, the inner game. The it is all an external, the expression of our mind. The it's are the environments we're putting our minds into. And the we is whatever is emerging. Why I say emerging? Because this integral Agile framework says one thing. We can imagine you are a company predominantly orange perspective. Yeah, on all 4 quadrants. We come in with beautiful ideas like Scrum, which are more in the green, right? Bring new Agile values, which are also more in the green. But as you said, the portfolio management is pretty much in orange. Will it work? If I look at an organization and I get, let's say, all those points, I will tell you no. will we have a different kind of governance and giving flexible team forming and so on, and have practices here and formed here? Will this work? I will have to tell you, I need to have a look at the predominant leadership perspective, who is involved in this whole thing. Because this theory says you can just emerge into the next step when all quadrants are significantly fulfilled. That means if you have an orange company and we come in with all this agile stuff, even with the structures, but you have no servant leadership established, not enough focus on the mindset, the organization will stay stuck in the orange perspective, in the perceived culture. This model says culture comes last as an emerging feature. When all the quadrants here are made correctly, then culture with a little bit gap follows. Yes, you can set vision, values, and so on, but how does it feel for the rest of the organization when it's not really established that it can live there? There was one CEO of an Eastern European bank. I was explaining him this model. I had just 30 minutes time, so I had to be really concise and going so deep. And he was watching the video before, and I was explaining this model, and he said, like, Mariusz, now I understand why this culture initiative was the worst millions investment of my lifetime in working with organizations, because they made a big event. The whole bank, it was a bank, closed down, and they made big posters and created, guided by an artist, nice big letters, trust in front of the bank, and said, okay, we're gonna have trust, collaboration, whatever words they had. But in a day-to-day life, things didn't feel like that, right? So, again, short wrap up. The I quadrant is all the inner game, the operation system, my motivations, my beliefs. Am I feeling safe at work? The it quadrant, it's all the things, the roles we can establish, the tools we can use, the frameworks we can apply. The it's quadrant, it's all about how you set up the environment, how we work in. Here's, you can see the continuous delivery pipeline is a very IT focused, but how do we govern? Do we establish a Spotify model? This kind of stuff. And then the we quadrant is an emerging feature, but can be also supported if you have all the other quadrants as well set, with some initiatives, how you work with teams and so on. Okay, you have still the place here to post questions if you have the questions so far. Ken Wilber, yeah, this is the thought patterns the Agile model I was showing you is based upon. It's not such an easy read because Ken Wilber wrote 15 books. It's pretty difficult, but all the expressing, let's say, books and lectures and videos also based on the integral model are very useful in my opinion to and I can, since I know this integral model, I understand when people are really referring to his thought school, which is basically also a meta collection of other really good and important thought schools and approaches from psychology. I see a bigger question right now here. many companies focus on same culture elements like ensuring transparency, trust, empowerment. Do you think we should build same culture in our organization? I would love to come back to this question again, because now I forgot one thing. I would love to know, coming back, do you think I'm missing out something on this picture? And you can use your Mentimeter in the I quadrant, or maybe you can give us now examples in the I quadrant of what does the I quadrant mean to you? Or what practices do you know? What could be mapped to the I quadrant? When you just post your answers, it will be exposed here. This gives me now a check if my audience now, if I've been good enough in explaining this model. What does the I quadrant resonate with you? You can use your Menti, 38, 59, 41. Give me an example. What are you applying in your environment according to the I quadrant with yourself, but also the things you coach into organizations or try? Leadership style defines culture. Context sensing. Now I'm missing a little bit the feedback. I would love to know. Context sensing. Do you mean the Kinefin framework? Attitude to risk. Spotify model. Maybe now a short hack. What I really love to do when it's all about to spot certain kind of behaviors which are based on a certain kind of leadership style or way of belief system somebody is into. Pretty easy if I make the people aware or give the coaches the advice to find a way how to reflect on this. I don't know if you see it on the Catalyst leadership style, where you can see, you know, is it somebody very egocentric, just me, I'm the smartest one? If everyone was like, would be like me, would be successful, is my way or the highway? If you see this cone, it's a growth of mindset, of mind, where we start as like having this me, and be very good and climbing up the ladder in the Tayloristic system towards be more strategic, being the achiever. I would love to achieve with my team, but in the end, it's I get to be the ones who gets all the credits. Towards the Catalyst way of leadership, of mindset where I really enable others, where I coach others, where I become coach, not a top-down boss. So this picture is pretty impactful. Let's go back to this. Autonomy, yes. Catalyst forever, thank you. Active listening, yes, all those practices. Great. Let's map the other quadrants. So what do you see is, from the IT quadrant, in your opinion, something which is pretty impactful? Is there something you would just throw now in this room as the impulse for the others? What are the practices you are inspiring, establishing? Seeing here on this picture. So for me, when I am going through organizations, I always have this model in my mind and check the ticks, if all things are in place, if they're really enabling wherever is wanted to establish. Switching roles, Kanban. Right now I'm working with a pharma company, which I have a really good base culture model, like our base culture, what I'm experiencing. And the funny thing is, like, we try to establish the agile ways of working and so on. And then, this COVID thing came. And then somebody was telling me, I don't have time to thinking of these new ways of working because I have this unpredictable field of stuff coming in, and the COVID stuff and so on takes our attention. I said, ever heard of Kanban? I mean, regulating work in progress kind of stuff and responding to complex, sometimes even chaotic circumstances, but to a complex environment. So, it's not work on top. It's really do things differently. Team mindset. How do you practice team mindset? Regular pair switching. Freedom to define practices. Yeah. Collective ownership. Great. So all comes from a greener perspective, isn't it? Some other awesome idea, otherwise I'm gonna go to the next quadrant. What structures, governments, initiatives, ways of doing things, how you set up systems, what do you know or do you even practice in your environment? I mean, now the question is like, yeah, we do remote working. It's pretty much forces us into this setup. She's super interesting, right? I mean, this whole COVID thing is giving us a frame of working which is unprecedented. So I'm really, really looking forward to see what long-term effects it will have for us as in the culture of the companies, but also in the culture globally, right? Let me see if we have some questions so far. So if you are here looking at this question about many companies look at this cultural elements of establishing transparency, trust, empowerment. If you are wanting to establish a more self-organized, agile organization, you need to think of all quadrants, and the fourth quadrant is the new kind of leader, the servant leader, which is embracing transparency. And when we want to be self-organized, we need to establish something which will give us a mirror how we process reality in a collective, and transparency is a must, right? So this is a nucleus. Trust. If I would love to give decisions to the team without wanting to control them, or in a game, it's worth to work. You remember the video of Laloux, where he said like 70% of the workforce after this poll in America, are we not engaged in the work, right? And this maybe comes to it that the systems we created, upper lower right quadrant, are based on this old approach of Taylorism, where you build up the production belt and the career ladder, and has nice command and control of environment, but the engagement, according to this poll, is pretty low. Why? Because we are knowledgeable workers. We would love to be part of something. And what drives our motivation best? If we are intrinsically motivated. And it works when we're gaining trust and the ability to contribute to something in order to create value. So this question, if you ask me, it works for a company when you really want to have self-organized environments and be people positive, right? So I think there's also minimum about how you work with your environments, and yes, I would say this is like a minimum of cultural requirement. But I think there's more to that. Hopefully this was enough as a question, as an answer. I'm going to leave this here. Oh, this is a good question. Do you think a Spotify model can enable to journey towards a teal organization? So I experienced one transformation myself. I've been part of a very successful startup. It's one of the most successful in Europe towards selling. It's Bubble language learning application. And when I came there, they've been starting doing Agile, coming from a very bureaucratic kind of approach, German teachers doing language courses, kind of like, hopefully nobody from Bubble is there, but like the Agile thing was very orange, yeah. But just having those different kind of approaches, that it was kind of Spotify-ish, was enabling the people to experience themselves in a self-organized way. And now for all the coaches between us, yeah, I don't know if you want to spread around this history, but they've been so self-organizing and reinventing themselves with time that from one day to another they decided to fire all Agile coaches and went totally teal. And you can also see then there was one podcast with Frederic Laloux interviewing the organization. So they really evolved from being, let's say, more orange towards green towards tealish, I would say. Not all parts are tealish, right? I mean, but still, and this is also the theory says that you cannot leapfrog and jump, for example, from an orange organization to teal. You need a step in between to have the people to experience self in an environment which is and not enabling them to develop the co-creative or like the collective culture and experience also in the inner game, in order to maybe then be open to enable teal ideas. Because if you tell to a transactional person, you know, from tomorrow on, nobody will ask you for permission. People will just do whatever they think is nice and just gonna ask you for advice. He will just kick you out from one moment to another and say, like, you know, go hippie, go to your islands. We have work to be done here, right? But I know, and this is maybe also easier to kickstart, I know some teal organizations here in Berlin especially, which are really performing pretty good. But funny thing is, when I observe how they structure themselves, I see that still, even in a teal organization, what we could consider orange ideas suddenly emerge, because it just makes sense to have a department which is taking care of payments and so on. So, you know, and it's not so super bubbly as you think, but still they do the practices of teal. So a Spotify model could be a chance, the short answer, to grow into a teal organization. In many company culture, most specifically Agile culture, is driven by HR. I personally try to give suggestions, but they often want to be man in the middle. Okay. I would love now to have like a range of people, and you tell all the your perspective, because I think it's not an is a complex question, and there's no easy answer for a complex question, isn't it? But I'm sorry that they don't involve you, right? So my approach is always to charm the depending on the base culture of the HR, but charm hell out of them, and explain and do offers and so on. But I also saw a lot of organizations don't include HR at all. So be happy, first of all, that HR is a driver for that. Or they want to be man in the middle. Okay, so maybe this question, it has much more complexity in it. So I would just maybe just stop with that to say it's not so bad to have HR involved, because they can enable stuff, but I would see in a more complex way on it, a more integral way, what is there or not. If they don't listen to suggestions, yeah, try to bring more chocolate, huh? Okay. Is there any question? The weak quadrant. I would love to know just now that you maybe post me, like, does it make sense what I shared with you today? And does it make sense to you? And would you know how to influence your weak quadrant in an integral way? Do you understand, maybe recognize so that did you learn something today? Is there something you can take out of this session for yourself, and see why the weak quadrant might be influenced by the other, or like that the weak quadrant is influenced by the other quadrants? And yeah, just maybe some comments. I feel a little bit alone right now. I don't see the responses of you. I see there's a discussion going on. HR will play a role in wider Agile. A longer answer is suggested that you need to remodel the relation between HR and Agile organization. Okay. Kenneth and Framework, yes. Yes. So Kenneth and Framework. So there's a book which is called Brave New Work, and it describes pretty nice that, like, what I took from this book was we need to establish a complexity-aware and people-positive organization able to enable this agile transformation and so on. Let me see, I'm preparing this. Okay, here it is. And maybe the last question here with you. So I would love to know from you, I would love to know if the group here is complexity aware. What is complex and what is complicated? Please do a vote. It's related to the Kinefin framework. Okay. So I do this kind of, it was just like my thank you. My best practice time filler in the end. So complexity awareness is really key. This is what I've learned. And I saw organizations answering these questions differently. So for the ones who answered the car engine, so whatever is, let's say, a car engine, it's a pretty complicated machine, but you can predict it because you can give, you can accelerate, you know, and give gas. It's not exploding, so somehow it's manageable. And the car traffic is not really predictable in a big way. And in this book of the Brave New Work, there was also like, how to set up organizations or what kind of measurements you take. Then he was taking also the car traffic as a super example, like that you decide if you're putting traffic lights or a roundabout. And he was asking the question, what do you think, like what was giving the more self-organized way? Let's say, do we have to put the strict rules, or do we put roundabouts? And the roundabouts are having much better fluency in traffic, right? So when we give the people the empowerment to self-organize, you know, complexity awareness, when we cannot predict the following step because always changing. And maybe some thoughts on the model again, just my backup slides. So we're having a world where paradigms are shifting, view paradigms are shifting, and the culture needs to follow this. Where on the behaviors, we are becoming more customer-centric, human-centric practices, the way we discover products. On the environment is set up, maybe some just words for you. OKR was one of those self-governance goal-setting tools, which was really impactful on the organizations I work with. That we are restructuring teams, right? The communication structure is changing from push to pull. We're going away from emails. We're pulling information in the contexts we need them. We're establishing DevOps structures. And the mindset of the leaders is changing from being the best expert in class, being very reactive, being pretty bossy, towards being the catalyst of new ideas, the creative leader, establishing creative leadership. Going away from must to control the others, to trust, to empower people. Okay. Let me see if there a new comment came in. Yeah, so let me rewind back. So, but this was basically it from myself. Thank you for the contributions. I see there's some more stuff came up. Thank you for all the ideas. Yes, a good starting point for more conversations. This model, yes, it really helps to establish this understanding in common, let's say, Agile Coaches group. And yeah, and I really encourage you to have a look at it, the Integral Agile Transformation Framework. This was really changing the way I process reality just by having those glasses on, being more forgiving with the leaders, which I know, oh, okay, orange leader. Yes, I know. I understand. And giving the understanding to others, also the other coaches which are working with the people, seeing where you have blind spots in the organization. And yes, there's not just the Spotify model, but it's pretty impactful. And I'm wishing you all here a lot of success in transforming your organizational culture. But be please patient, because, you know, take care of all the quadrants. Culture, I'm sorry to say, comes last. And it's mostly read only. Thank you very much.